and gentlemen. And the last session is for all those who believe in thinking out of the box. The discussion shall be moderated by our very own Miss Soma Bhatta, the editor, Retail Jeweler magazine, who will encourage our panelists to talk about their views, their ideas that catapult the business to a whole new level. May we please welcome Ms. Soma Bhatta and the entire panel comprising Mr. Samir Sagar, Director, Manubai Jewelers. Can we please have you here? Mr. Samir Sagar. May we kindly invite Mr. Rajiv Pople, the Director, Pople & Sons Jewelers. A humble request to Mr. Rajiv Pople to kindly be here with us. May we please put our hands together for the COO PN Jewelers, Mr. Ashwin Bafna. Mr. Ashwin Bafna. Mr. Narendra Motwani, Head of E-Commerce and Digital Marketing, Malabar Gold and Diamonds. A wholehearty welcome to you, Mr. Narendra Motwani. And let's also welcome Mr. Rupesh Jain, Founder and CEO, Candere by Kalyan Jewelers. A wholehearty welcome to you, Mr. Rupesh Jain. So this is going to be absolutely high-octane discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please put our hands together once again for Ms. Soma and our panelists here. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Soma.
Good evening, everyone. I think I have a huge task at hand. This is the last session of the day. We are running 2 hours late, and we have to discuss new ideas. So I think throughout the day, we have heard a lot of prolific speakers. We have had insightful presentations, and we have covered a wide spectrum of topics. So I'm sure all of you are already brimming with new ideas, but I promise you that our panelists are ready to, what they're planning to share will definitely add value. So thank you for your time and patience. So just to set the context for this discussion, when we talk about new ideas, I think 5 years back, if I was to sit here and talk about new ideas, typically we would be looking at, ideas which lead to some quick wins. It could be retail promotions, it could be some mega successful campaigns, some consumer engagement programs which we have worked very well for retailers. But today, if we are to talk about new ideas, I think the markets are looking at trends, and there are influences in the market where we have to look at new ideas from the lens of new areas. Could be social commerce, could be immersive technologies, could be data analytics, could be the idea of sub-brands that Amit talked about. So there's a whole lot more than the quick wins that we have always looked at. So to start with, I will ask Samir, we have a whole lot of legacy retailers in the audience, and it's good to assume that when they started out, they had a certain segment of customers that they have organically built over the years. They are positioned in a certain space, but now today the market's being so dynamic, they may be looking at new segments of consumers, they may be looking at new product categories, but feeling challenged with the position and the the profile that they have, the persona that their brands have created. You have successfully launched a sub-brand which is endorsed by your parent brand. Could you give some insight as to what led you to start that?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Soma. Thank you for inviting me here. Okay, so I think if you're asking me where this thought process started from, so if you see, we've been part of these forums since a long time, and this one discussion, the consumer is changing. The consumer is more exposed to a lot of things than ever before, right? So that the consumer is traveling places, wearing new things, experiencing new things. So what was a common factor was the experience part. So as a legacy, right? So Manubai Jewelers has a legacy of 3 decades. We have our own ethos for quality, for trust, and lately, since the last decade, for designs. But the experience factor was missing. and or rather the experience factor is a new entrant in the scene. So the consumer now also expects a certain experience, right? So be it anything, right, from dining to probably vacationing, holidaying, everything, right? It's an experience-led decision. So how do we get experience into the whole scenario without kind of shifting very dramatically? Because what happens is you already have your base which is coming to you right now for a reason, right? So one, you want to retain those clients. Also, you want to build up something, right? So how do you build up an experience without losing your own space? So there is where Madhuban, the idea of Madhuban came in. And so Madhuban, we just wanted to have a, not just in terms of the jewelry, the whole space, we wanted a 360-degree kind of an experience zone. So Madhuban, and then we supported by, because we have that legacy, we have that ethos in place. So then we had Madhuban by Manubhai in place. Yeah.
Can you give some insight into what was Manubhai positioned as, and what is the opportunity you saw with Madhuban?
So, like you mentioned, right? So we've been in this business since a long, long time, and there were, of course, this just by the sheer presence of being in that place, we had these customers throughout these years, and we had those customers coming in, right? Since the last decade, it was all about design. When I joined the business, design really, no one spoke about designs that much. It was just all about managing the finance part of it. But the last decade was design. So I would say Manubhai is, of course, there's trust because we have been around since a long time. We were one of the first jewelers in Mumbai, at least, to start hallmarking and 916 way before anyone did. So the trust factor was there since a long time. There was, of course, this expertise just by being there in the industry since a long, long time. We were really focused on design since the last decade or so, especially last 7 years. So that whole combine, and of course service. When I say service, it's more homely. It's a nice, warm feeling. People are very warm to talk to at our place. So there's a very homely, good to go at kind of a place, known for our designs, known for our quality, known for our, I would say policies, right? So we had all these policies since a long time back. But the whole experience, again, if I wanted to add to Manubhai, I think it would take away the spirit of Manubhai in some way. If I drastically overnight change the whole structure of the store, structure of the way we interact with our customer. So it makes sense to not just kind of completely shift your identity away to something else just because you think that that is also necessary, but also to make it as part of your family.
So as I understand, Manubhai was catering to maybe a client base which was looking at more commercial designs, and Madhuban is all about maybe upselling to your customers or looking at a niche segment which is looking for more premium designs and a better experience?
So I would say Manubhai also was carrying that whole premium line, right? So I would say the higher ticket price items, the bridal pieces and all that. We had that in Manubhai. In fact, we do have that in Manubhai as of now as well. But, what about the experience of buying those pieces? What about the experience of, so even in Madhuban, we have smaller ticket size items. It's not that there's just only heavy ticket size items there. But it's all about, again, we keep on going back to the experience of it.
On that note, I would like you to play the short clip that we have of his store.
Jewelry masterpieces inspired by the spellbinding glories of the beautiful and impressive Indian royals. It embeds the same richness, detailing, splendid designs, exemplary craftsmanship and grandeur, kindred with heritage jewelry of the most rare and lasting magnificence. Enduring beauty and inestimable worth is what governs the design and handcrafting of every single piece at Madhuban, using the hand-cut emeralds, rubies and white sapphires. Style, substance and significance come together to distinguish Madhuban. We welcome you to Madhuban by Manubhai.
Ashwin, I'll come to you next. Before I talk to Ashwin, I would want to show off hands. And my question is, how many of you sitting here run a loyalty program for your customers? Can I have a show of hands? Just one? Really? Two. So we are not doing too well when it comes to wanting to retain our customers, and there is this huge hue and cry that I always hear that the loyalty of customers is thinning. So that's a huge dichotomy, but Ashwin, you must tell the audience about this loyalty program which you started in the year 2014 and how you have been successfully running it, and now at this stage they have over 1.5 million loyal customers. Let's hear it from him as to how they started, how they are retaining those loyal customers, what are their engagements. Over to you, Ashwin.
So before I go into the process that how we build it, just a small data done by World Advertising Research Council that when you look at consumers who are supposed to come to your store by offering loyalty, if world average is at 65-66%, the Indian consumer is at 85-86%. So if you're offering a loyalty, chances of a consumer coming back is higher. That's a typical Indian behavior. I always give a example of, a Pani Puri wala. That you may not have a person leaving pizza and coming for Pani Puri, but you will go to a guy who gives that extra puri at the end of the Pani Puri. So loyalty is just like that extra puri. It may not get me customer from other category, but to retain my customer within the category, it's a huge tool. Now coming to building the program, we were fortunate that P&G as an organization invested in technology way back in early 2000s. So we had a huge database. It's almost 180, 90-year-old company. So if you ask me, I have a customer database of 4 million plus. But still to convince them to come into loyalty, because jewelry is not a category where people want to come into loyalty program. So initially we ended up giving much higher returns. If you ask me in 2014, we gave people 1 point for every 100 rupees spent, and 1 point was equal to 1 rupee. That is as good as giving away 1% of your gross profit, where your gross margin businesses are in single digit, which was huge. But that helped us build the base. So today I have an active 1.5 million customers who are active in my loyalty program. And as the moment went ahead, we reduced the amount we are giving. So today it is down to 1/40th of what we were giving. But people are used to it. Now I give 1 rupee per 1,000 and 25 paisa per point. So that's how first we enrolled the people and then moved the program into a much more economically sustainable model.
Okay, so there are various kinds of loyalty programs. There are referrals, discounts, experiential rewards, and points that you mentioned. Which one is working best for you? You have a tiered program which goes from silver to platinum. So how is it working?
So, okay, when we run a loyalty program, it's a combination of all. But the single largest point, if you ask, is the burning of referral points. That is the single largest driver of sales. All other things are add-on. Then we have a multi-tiered in the sense platinum, diamond, gold and silver tier, depending on the annual purchase you do with us. And these tiers entitle to you a flat discount on making charges, flat discount on diamond jewelry. In addition to that, various programs, various invites to exclusive show, previews, and lot of other benefits depending on your tier.
Have you seen customers reacting better to experiential rewards which go past your products? It's very easy to engage customers and say, okay, hey, come here, I'll give you a 10% discount because you are so-and-so. But are you able to draw customers more regularly through experiential rewards, which can be an added value for the customer?
See, the typical experience has been typically with the higher reward layer customers I'm talking of, who value experience. If you call them for sale, the turnaround would be hardly 1% or 2%. But when you call them for any experiential program, which can be as good as we do a, grooming session at a store. We have even done baking master classes, diamond master classes. When we are not pitching for sales and they end up coming to the store, we see a much better conversion because they have money in their pocket. But you are not forcing them to sell. We are engaging them at some other level, but when they come to the store, when they experience the whole thing, sales automatically happen. So we believe that for a top tiers, which is like my diamond and platinum tier, it is the other experiences, as good as music concert. If I'm in Pune, people are more towards, Pune is known as the Maharashtrian Sanskritik Rajdhani. So the plays, a music concert, those are the things when they come for those, they end up buying automatically. But if you call them for buying, probably they will not respond.
So it's, in that sense, experiential rewards go a long way in engaging
Absolutely.
premium customers.
Absolutely.
When we talk about understanding customers, and now that you have a loyal base of customers, it gets important to understand what are the consumer trends. And I'm aware that P&G is one of the first adapters, at least true to what I know, first adapters in the industry of a technology, of an online-based feedback mechanism. So can you throw some light on how that is working for you?
So every customer who shops at P&G, at that time itself, they get an SMS with a link to give their feedback. Our understanding has been that we are getting 12 to 15% customers who respond to us. On the responses, any response which is average or below average, we have a dedicated call centers. Every average and below average customer gets a call that why was your experience average or below average. Regular customers, we do random calling because I cannot reach out to each and every customer. And that report is shared even with the stores on a regular basis, that what have been the reasons for average or below average experiences and how do we improve those experiences. And the 12 to 15% response rate, I suppose, is very decent because generally people don't respond to SMS-based responses. So that's how we take it.
If it's not too much to ask, I'm aware that majority of your business is of gold, and we are always discussing the margins. And you have this humongous loyalty program. So for the benefit of the people who are sitting here, could you throw some light on how much cost you incur, just as a percentage, just a data point so that they understand what it would mean for their bottom lines?
So as I told you, initially we were giving almost 1% of our margin, which was very high. Second thing is, how do you run your loyalty? Because if you go to a third party who is running your loyalty, it's never going to work in jewelry because third party is going to charge a certain commission on the program. And your outflow to third party will be higher than inflow. Because when a person has 1,000, 2,000 rupees or point, he is more likely to go and shop on a cosmetic or in Chroma. So you never get other customers coming into jewelry. So it's not advisable to go for third party or shared loyalty programs. You need to have your own loyalty program where you only payout happens if there is a sale happening. So in that sense, it makes economic sense. But you should not go for tie-up with banks or additional points. They all you end up burning money without getting enough return.
Last question for you on this subject. What percentage of your top line comes from this loyalty segment?
See, if you ask me how much points we burn, that's
no. What percentage of your turnover are you seeing coming from this?
But then if I am talking of a loyalty base of almost 15 lakh customers, and it's an old brand.
No, but you're expanding, you're going out to new markets, everything
But
put
then
together.
that is also based on research. Those customers were traveling all the way to Pune to shop from P&G. Now we are going to their doorsteps. So definitely new geographies do add. But then as the business trends are there today, more than 70% business is repeat customers. And every customer is part of my database, irrespective of his tier.
Rupesh, coming to you. Congratulations, Candere got acquired by Kalyan. I'm aware that you have some radical pricing policy. So a lot of jewelers want to go online. They are already doing social commerce, but they don't have a full-fledged e-com mechanism. that is something that I'm sure they would want to eventually venture into. But the whole ecosystem around jewelry online sales is not very conducive. You know, people are worried about the logistics, the returns, all of that. But to a large extent, you have overcome all those challenges. So would you like to throw some light on that?
Thank you so much, Soma, for inviting me. Good evening, everyone sitting here. I know this is the last session here, and everyone is waiting for the drinks out now. But I'll not take much of their time. So the way back when we started Candere as an independent entity in 2012, it was very difficult for setting up the entire e-com in the country because none of the logistics partners were helping us with respect to delivering a gold jewelry or a diamond jewelry to the doorstep of the consumers. So we had very hard time there cracking the entire logistic model. But currently the logistics in India have been sorted to a very great extent, and we have all the best partners working with us, right from BVC to Sequel to Blue Dart to FedEx, and you can ship the jewelry globally as well as in India very easily. So shipping is completely solved as a problem for the e-com company. Payments as a process, initially there were very few banks, few payment gateways working in this particular industry, but now I think we have the entire gamut of payment gateways open for us, right from PayU to PayPal to Razorpay to you name the company and everyone is there inside. Plus we have so many wallet coming inside the country, right from Google to Flipkart, PhonePe to Amazon Pay. So that is also helping, and now they are also going to the offline world, and people are paying in the offline stores also through Paytm or through PhonePe. So I think in financial technology, fintech, I think India is doing phenomenally good, and I think that particular part is also resolved to a great extent. Still a lot of developments are happening with respect to AI, machine learning. So recently we have tied up with one more company who helps us in detecting the fraud for any online transaction that happens. So even that part is taken care of. A lot of frauds were happening in the online world with respect to cards getting used by wrong people. But now there are AI and ML in place, and there is a huge database which is already made in the market, and they are tagging every single user who is doing fraud, and you can be saved from the fraud detection. So payment-wise also a lot of things are resolved. The most difficult part which I feel for the entire jewelry industry is there, and a lot of work needs to be done there, is cataloging. I think that's the biggest challenge that we all will face when you guys will put your own online store. A lot of people already have the online store, but still we all are struggling to have the fastest mechanism to put our products online. So there a lot of work is going on around that, and a few players in the market are trying to solve that. Even eJewelry as a platform is trying to solve that particular problem for all the jewelers in the country. So that problem will definitely get addressed. Other than that, in terms of policy, when we started and we were startup and we were competing not with the other jewelry players, but we were, as Samir Sagar mentioned, that people are more experiential and they want more experience now. So people were comparing Candere to Amazon's and the Flipkart of the world, what experience they were giving on their platform versus what we were giving on our platform. So as a tech company, we were very focused on building experiences only, and we took one problem at a time and we tried solving those problems on our platform. So we focused on giving a lot of customization feature on the website. So we are a zero inventory model, JIT model that we have, and people can customize right from SIGH quality to VVACF quality on the fly of a button. They can customize from 10 karat to 18 karat to 22 karat at a fly of a button. They can engrave a lot of features inside the product that they want, because when I was there in US and when I was buying an Apple product, they gave me a feature of engraving a particular name on that particular iPad. So that really inspired me of having that particular feature on the website. So today when we are doing ring sales, 85 to 90% of our ring sales are having that feature. So everyone is opting for that feature where they are making a personalized engraving inside the ring, which really makes it very personal for us, so that we can we really know that the consumer is buying it for someone, and we can really put a beautiful gift card for that particular consumers. So today our competition is really not with our own jewelry competitor, but we are actually competing with all the other players, right from the larger players like Make My Trip to Book My Show to Flipkart and Amazons of the world. So all the players who are there in the market, I think they can go step by step of building their own e-commerce platform, because in next 5 to 10 years, according to my understanding, everyone will have to come online, because this is going to be the biggest discovery platform for all of us. Even at hyper local level, people are going to discover us on the online platform. So we need to start building from today, so that when there is a huge race, we are already there in the, inside the race. So on the policy side, Soma, you asked me, so we have a very stringent policy, even when we were competing to all the larger players, but we took a stand. Since we do not had to bleed too much, we had a very strict policy on the website that we will not do COD. So we did not do cash on delivery, because there were a lot of frauds which were happening on cash on delivery. And we had to convince our customers that we do not have this feature, but still our product has value. We have a lot of respect for you, so please buy from us. And people kept believing in us, and they started buying from us. Second very stringent policy that we have is none of the e-com players has that. We have clearly mentioned on our website that when you return the product, and if there is no manufacturing defect, there will be a 10% deduction that we are going to do in the product. So, and we convey it very clearly across the website, or whenever our customer service relationship team talks to the consumer, we make it very clear to them. But people have believed that now they are giving genuine products with all certification, BIS, hallmarking, GIA, IGI, SGL. So people have believed that also, that this company is giving us a genuine product. So exchange is 100%, but if they opt for a refund, then there is a 10% deduction. So we really did not want to bleed in the market, and we took that policy also.
I think it's quite commendable, because the online ecosystem is built around discounts, cash on delivery, and returns without any questions asked. So I think there is a key takeaway for most jewelers here, that if you build on experience, which you clearly have, they can overcome the other challenges related to pricing and returns. From a zero inventory model, Narendra, now we come to you. We had a small chat the other day, and he said that we must not talk about Malabar having a zero inventory model. It is called the optimum inventory model. And Kalyan doesn't have an omni-channel strategy, because Candere stands on its own right as an independent channel for Kalyan, which is catering to a different segment of customers who are looking to buy smaller value goods. And on the contrary, Malabar, as we spoke, has a 100% omni-channel strategy. Please do enlighten us with what is the biggest jeweler in the world thinking on the omni-channel strategy.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Soma, you're very smart in getting the numbers. What we discuss, you know how to present it. So basically, I just tell you about what we do in omni-channel. A company has a vision of providing a seamless and unified customer experience across the platform. Now, what we've seen is that a lot of customers who are coming online and browsing the website and not buying much. Unlike if you look at the store, if you have 100 customers visiting your store, you will see at least 50% conversion happens. 50% comes to 50% customers usually buys from the store. But online is not a case. Usually you'll find a lot of visitors and less of the conversions. You'll find the visitors going beyond 50,000, 80,000 a day, but you'll not find the transactions like 20,000 a day. It's not the case. What we understood is that customer really want to see the jewelry before they make a decision. We understood this point. As a company vision of providing the same experience to the customer, what we have done is that we adopted a strategy, which is omni-channel. We all know what is omni-channel. Omni-channel is what? We provide same experience across the platform. We show the inventory, what is available at the store. We show the inventory that is available online at the store inventory online. So this way, this helps us in increasing our sale a lot. when we look at a data and this decision what we took going omnichannel is based on a certain data. Trust me, it's not just a gut feeling. If the market is going with omnichannel, we should also go with the omnichannel. We waited a lot to see there are certain indicators. If there are certain indicators in the market which suggests us to adopt this technology, and we saw 2 years back, we saw that there's a particular age group of 24 to 35. Now this customer, we all know, so it's the internet age group. And this age group comes to our website in a big percentage, beyond 65%. The people come to the website in the age group 24 to 35. This customer spends more than 35 minutes on our website browsing at least 20 pages. Now when they browse 20 pages, a big number, browsing the 20 pages of the jewelry, researching, what they wanted, it means they wanted to ensure before they make a purchase decision, they know what they wanted to buy. When they browse it, some of them convert, some of them go to the store and asking for the same piece of the jewelry. This triggered us, saying that why can't we show the same jewelry, what is available in online, we can show it at the store. At least we reduce the customer wait time at a store. We all know the wait time is very high at every store, as in the customer, they don't see, to this age group customer, they don't want to wait much. They're very clear. Their objective is clear what they want to do. They want, even the bridal also, they do a research. They know what they want to buy. They just go to the store, they say, this is what I wanted to buy. And the store guys shares the same jewelry and we deliver it from the store. At the same time, when a customer comes to the store and they're searching the jewelry, like they look at 3-4 trays and they say, oh, I want something in a lighter weight. I want something specific to this. And the store person shows the jewelry which is online. And this way, a sales happen at a store, a purchase happens at a online. So this we have identified and we have taken a decision of going around omnichannel. Another indicators what we understood is customer wants a faster delivery. Customer doesn't want to wait. If you make a payment, you will not wait. The expectation increases about the product, and if you miss even a single day, customer will really cancel an order. He'll not concern about, okay, if you are delivering a good product or not. He said, my time, for whatever occasion I'm buying online, and definitely I don't want to wait. I don't want to invest even a single day. What if I'll just go to the next store, I'll just buy from there if you are not able to service an order before time or on time. This gives us a strong message to us saying that, why can't we integrate our inventory, which is available at a store? All our stores, we have a beautiful images. We have a humongous inventory at a store. On online, it's difficult. It's very difficult to maintain the inventory based on the customer location. Like if a customer is coming from the Vijayawada, definitely the customer's expectation about the jewelry is different. If a customer is coming from the Bangalore, the customer's expectation, perception about the jewelry variety is different. It is very difficult to have all the jewelry available in stock in an online store and then say, okay, you have whatever is your jewelry preference, we have everything for you, because Malabar is present across country. We have more than 260 stores across 10 countries. It is very difficult to maintain all the jewelry which are available at online, wherever the customers are. So this omni-channel approach, when we integrate our stores, what we saw is that there's an upliftment of our sales, because customers are getting what they want, what they're seeing at the next store's sales. Because if a customer is coming from the Bangalore, they are seeing what inventory, what designs usually they see in the stores in the Bangalore, they see is online. If a customer is coming from, say for example, Kerala, they know what jewelry they are seeing in the Kerala, and then that is what they're getting in online. So we are trying to make our channel, online channel, customer friendly. We are trying to give whatever is possible to the customer, because we know the customer is the king. So this really helped us in taking such decision on going online, adopting the omnichannel approach.
So you must be sitting on a huge amount of data with your online strategy. How are you using it to better affect within the organization?
Okay. So the data, basically we have on a website, we have a huge number of visitors coming online, and at offline store there are a huge number of transactions happening at a store's level. Now what we do, we integrate this two data. We have created a customer pool. We use a lot of data segmentation, customer segmentation technique in a way that we know based on our searches, whatever way we segment the data, we get those customers. Now what happens is, when a customer comes to the online and he doesn't purchase, we don't retarget a customer with online store advertisement, because if he's coming to the store, he's coming to the online store and he's not buying. So there's no point we investing so much amount of money again to get that customer back. Rather we show him ads to the next door store available. So we use hyperlocal targeting. Now with the use of a hyperlocal targeting, if a customer, say for example, customer coming from the Mumbai and he's invested particular amount of a time and we know he's coming 2 times, 3 times, but he's not buying it. What we do is, based on certain indicators, we target him with an ads which will show him an ad of a store of Andheri, because we want him to come to the store at least. At the same time, what we do, if a store, whenever we have our online promotions, we run some promotions. This is a huge database what we have. We have a big analytical team sitting in our headquarters. With using the data, what we get it, we make certain strategic decisions. We use certain customer segments and we retarget them, showing them an online ads, because we know based on their behavior, how likely they are going to come online. We show them an ads. So this way we try to sync online and offline without having any competition between these 2 channels of a sale. We find this 2 channel, there is no 2 channel of a sale. It's a single customer. Customer wants to come to the online and offline. He wants to see an ad. Customer is concerned about Malabar Gold. That's what we see. So there's no competition about online and offline in our store. So that's how we make this data, we use this data in an effective manner.
Basically take one view of the customer.
Yes, unified view.
All right. Rajiv, coming to you. You have pioneered the use of 3D technology in the industry. So, there is so much talk about the poor sentiment in the market, affordable jewelry, people actually bringing down the average price points in their stores. And here we are with 3D technology in platinum jewelry and upping the game. So what is your market insight, and how did you, and why did you go about introducing this?
Good evening, everybody. Last one on the call here. I can see an overtime of 4 minutes already, so I'll make it quick. There's a particular segment of a consumer who's ever demanding, and that's across price points, across categories. Places where we are located as a brand, Poplay, it's Bandra, Dubai. These are centers of a serious consumption of premium jewelry. Our customer connect constantly demands certain product categories which are at par with international standards. We sell certain brands which are internationally available. So our product line that we need to keep evolving is premium, design oriented, and something which is up for the discerning class. Across price points, I should say. It's not only just the price point we determine the category. So 3D was an evolution, basically. It's not that I came to sell 3D as a subject to the audience, but it's a product category which was created and demanded certain technology inputs to keep the product at par with national category of products, which is the Tiffany's of the world, you can say. And at the same time, because we already had a flair of selling platinum jewelry, it was my first choice as a metal. And all this came up with design collections that were evolved by the company. And this particular collection that we're talking about was headed by me as in design. Since I'm into art myself, I created lines which were inspired from my own artworks. And there are certain technology benefits that were derived out of 3D, which were used in creating such pieces. And that's where we needed optimum manufacturing techniques which are required. And somewhat we thought the basic casting methods and the hand-done processes may not be the best that we can provide for such kind of work. So we adapted 3D, and we did a lot of research in it. And since we've got a network across the globe for sourcing, we could connect with our vendors around and get the technology as a product per se to India. And currently we are offering it over the counter, platinum jewelry, which is customized, premium, couture, And even PGI has endorsed it as the only ones in the country as of now.
Lovely. Ashwin, coming back to you, you are also sitting with a whole lot of data. Can you throw some insights which have helped you strategize or re-strategize your approach in any way? Because there's a whole lot of talk about data and analytics, you know.
See, data is like sea. You cannot quantify that what you do, and every time you sit and analyze data, there is a new angle you can come up with. So it's an ongoing process. We cannot say that we have mastered it or done it. But as mostly we were talking about loyalty. So through loyalty, we use it. One of the most important thing, we use it for customer reactivation. So we look at customer who have bought from us, who are not buying from us. How do we make them come back to our store? We top up loyalty points for a certain time as an incentive that, okay, your points are expiring, we give you this much extra points, but come in next 15 days. Then it's a very common, like, you know, birthday, anniversaries, Valentine's, buying behavior. So if a customer is buying near every birthday, we know that they are bound to come and it's better to invest in those. Whereas, you know, you have customers that you have been wishing them and sending them birthday discount vouchers for years and they have never turned up. Then that's a waste of an investment. So the thing is using that data and you're able to pinpoint, give the customer what he wants, what time he is buying. So it's a constant process we keep doing. But in loyalty, customer reactivation is one of the most important things which helps us get back the customer to the store.
Narendra, in our discussion, you were telling me about how you are using your data for research. Can you enlighten the audience with that?
Data for research.
For product research. I think that was a very interesting idea.
Yes. So most of the time when we launch a collection, we do a test run. It's difficult to launch a collection across the nation, you know, sitting on so much of inventory. So what we do is we make a use of our e-commerce platform. There's a lot of customers' data. We have a customer pool. We basically upload certain collections on our website, which is a private collection. We invite a certain customers. They come to the online store. They view the collection. They give their feedback. Based on the feedback, we take a decision whether the product can be launched or not launched. So this way, we not only, you know, the online is not only offline in taking our decisions, at the same time, it is helping each other to reach out and retain certain pool of our customers. So we make a use of online like that.
So I think basically, whether it is loyalty points or the online feedback mechanism or the research that you're doing, I think it's pointing towards one thing, you know, which Devang said about customer centricity. It's giving the customer, I think, a sense of partnership in business, you know, more than treating a jeweler as a vendor for jewelry. There is a sense of partnership with the brand, which can create a top-of-mind recall and help you also retain loyalty in, you know, the customer's mind. So that is one. So lastly, Samir, coming to you, what are the challenges? You know, what are the challenges of maintaining two brands? As a family jeweler, I think most are grappling in maintaining one brand, and here you are with two. So what are the positives and negatives for a family jeweler if they at all think of venturing into a sub-brand route of expansion?
So I think the biggest is the budgets. So two brands demand two kind of different budgets on their own. But more deeper, I think both the brands require different thought processes, different execution styles, different campaigns. It's a different, like having two complete different itineraries. So managing that and also kind of having some synergy between them is and getting it right. So it's an ongoing process. We have not arrived there yet, but we are working towards it. But that is the most challenging part, where you manage two different entities, not letting them morph into each other, because it's very easy, right? So we do a lot of stuff for Manubai online, and it's very easy to kind of take that and just put it up there on Madhuban. So to manage those two different brands on a very micro level. I think that is the biggest challenge.
Okay. The last word from all our panelists, I'll start with you, Rupesh, on new ideas for building business for family jewelers sitting out here. I mean, each one of you have your area of expertise, so what's the last word on that?
So my key suggestion to all the people here would be start investing in talent. So the people would be the biggest asset that we can ever build in our organizations. So if we start putting a lot of energy towards building right kind of talent, I think we all would be in the right direction. Right from data part, people doing data analytics for us, to branding part, to managing our operations in more efficient way, because there are specialists available in the market who are really doing their job well than what we can ever do as business owners. So I think we should all start investing more and more in people. That's my key for everyone.
Narendra?
So from our side, we are of a view, start investing in customer experience, start investing in providing this benefit like a trust to the customers. So Malabar, we have identified this as a biggest challenge of why customer doesn't buy online. What we've identified is when a customer comes online, they are of a view, what if I don't get a cashback? What if I don't get an exchange? So provide same policies, what you give it to the offline stores customer, provide the same policy to the customer online. This will really help you in having the same customer irrespective of the channel of the sales. I think focus more on the giving the same policies to the customers.
For me, like at PNG, what we look at is like the whole discussion is between organized and non-organized. I would rather like a term organized family jeweler. So we should become process oriented, we should standardize, but that human touch needs to be maintained. We cannot overnight become a national brand where there is purely process oriented, because people have connected with us, they have emotion connect with the brand over 190 years. So the challenge is to expand, become process oriented, but at the same time keep the human touch alive, so that एक वो आदमी आया तो लगे ये मेरा दुकान है. How that feeling which has continued for 190 years, how do that keep continuing in the mind of consumers, existing as well as the new customers, that they should feel this is my shop when they walk into a PNG.
For us at Pople, it would be product quality, which is very, very important, because we're facing the international world today, whether getting in technology or outsourcing it, either ways. But if at all, your product has to be kept at par with international products which are already entering India, like a Tiffany or Harry Winston. We need to up our quality levels all the time, and there's no end to that part, whether it's design-oriented quality or whether it's product-oriented quality or the service-oriented quality. All has to be up to stand apart and be shelved with the other international brands. And we can't shy that out today, because in spite of being one of the largest jewelry markets in the world, we still don't have a single international brand of our own, which is standing in front of a Tiffany or a Harry Winston. So we need to upscale on that, on a very long way to go.
So you're saying that there is a market out there where customers are willing to pay a price for craftsmanship, premium
Of course,
quality?
we all are paying. We are paying for designers, we are paying for a Sabyasachi lehenga. Why not for gold and diamond jewelry? It's just that we've not upscaled our levels to that point to be shelved at the same time. Why isn't an Indian jeweler got an international name till now to be labeled next to Harry Winston or a Graf? So we still have to go a long way, and we all have to upscale to that level. There is something missing. Honestly, we don't have the answer today, but there is something missing, and we need to approach it. So probably this is the way we have to go ahead. And our aim should be to be shelved next to a Graf as an Indian brand.
Wonderful, aspirational. Sameer?
So I guess for us at Manubai, it's competing with ourselves. It's kind of find our own niche, what value we bring to the table for the consumer, and really looking inward rather than looking outward, right? right? So how can we change ourselves? How can we better ourselves every day? Whether it's processes, whether it's getting talent, whether it's design, whether it's experience, all throughout.
So to sum it up, I would say there is good news. There is a lot of innovation happening in retail. And the bad news is there is a lot of innovation happening in retail, which means that business as usual is not an answer. When we look at retail, there is some fundamental change that retail is undergoing. We need to recognize those changes. I am aware it has affected it has had negative impact on many jewelers, while there are others, and there are a couple of them sitting here with us. They have seen evolution, growth, opportunities. So it's important to remember that, when we look at retail, we need to develop a perspective by seeing both parts. One, the whole of retail, and then the parts of retail. When it comes to religion, we say that India is a land of many realities. I think it holds equally true for retail. So we need to get a view seeing all parts of it. And the fact is that between 2013 to 18, retail as an industry has grown at 10% CAGR, which is double of what it grew between 2008 to 13. And in the next 3 years, it's slated to grow at the rate of 12% CAGR. So I think the business outlook is quite positive. But as jewelers, we need to create a culture within our organization. Like Samir said, we need to internalize things. And retail has become so dynamic that we cannot anymore afford to have a knowing culture within the organization. And when I say knowing culture, I mean a typical approach where we think we have the experience and therefore have a practical approach to most problems. We need to look at data points. We need to have a very information-centered decision-making. We need to create a learning culture within the organization for us to be more nimble, to adapt to trends, and to be able to build our organizations in the dynamic retail environment. And I'm sure all of us have the skills. It's just about how fast we are in adapting to the market trends. So on that note, I know I come between the bar and all of you. We'll end the day and wish you good luck for the year ahead.
Thank you so much. And may we please thank all our panelists here and the moderator of the session, Ms. Soma. Also, can we please invite our presenters here for the mementos? May we kindly put our hands together as we please invite Mr. Anand Prakash of Abhushan Diamond and Gold, Mr. Nikhil Desai, Charu Jewel Surat, Mr. Sanjay Kalsi from JD Solitaire, Mr. Atul Ashtekar from Pune, and may we also invite Mr. Abhishek from Jaipur, Mr. Abhishek Raniwala from Jaipur. Can we please have our presenters here, please? Thank you. To present our mementos to Mr. Samir Sagar, Mr. Rajiv Pokle, Mr. Ashwin Bafna, Mr. Narendra Motwani, and Mr. Rupesh Jain. And we truly thank Ms. Soma Bhatta for moderating the session. Thank you for sharing smiles towards the end of the day. I truly thank each and every one of you for your humble presence, but nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, there is still a surprise for all of you.